when you are just one step away from reaching your goal in life, that actually is a crossroad, and it's up to you to look both ways.
Say, do you like hunky black dudes? Do you enjoy blood showers, but feel like Deadline didn't give you quite enough? Do you like being reminded that Samuel L. Jackson doesn't actually age? Or do you just enjoy watching black-led horror movies that were made after the year 1978? Well, either which way, I have a film for you. 1990's Death by Temptation is the sole directorial effort from James Bond III, a name I will not be making any Martini-related jokes about. It tells the story of two childhood best friends, Joel, played by Mr. Bond, and Kay, played by Kadeem Hardison. Well, Kay, who's now a successful film actor, frequents a bar in Brooklyn, and, wouldn't you know it, there's a vampiric succubus on the loose, seducing men and sucking them dry. Know what I mean, fellas? Just to complicate matters even more, Joel has shown up in Brooklyn after becoming disillusioned with his Christian faith, and he has the unfortunate luck of becoming romantically entangled with the devious bloodsucker terrorizing the city. As you can imagine, things get dark, things get horny, and things get bloody. First off, let's take a look at this packaging, because it is beautiful. Obviously, this is the slipcover, which is now sold out, but the whole thing is just gorgeous. You know what? My words don't do it justice. Let's get a sexy sax montage going. How about that? Can we get a sexy sax montage? There's several things about this movie that are very striking that really kind of launch it above other Troma releases. First off, it looks good, but the other thing is that it has a lot of great special effects that you really wouldn't expect out of a film with not only with its budget, but one that was, again, distributed by Troma, who did have a hand in production near the end of filming.
And that is for man's total being and spirit to remain focused upon and to be completely submissive to the utmost reality, which of course is God.
James Bond III has a lot of Christian influences, just because of his background, and he utilizes those in the film. There's definitely a narrative all about good versus evil, and it's pretty cut and dry, but it doesn't get as misogynistic as you'd think. And what I mean by that is because the film is based around the idea of a succubus, literally bleeding men dry, you would assume that it's kind of taking an anti-woman slant. I mean, it's just a chick who's just picking up dudes in the bar all willy-nilly. But what ends up happening is the first half of the film, you have a lot of just, hey, here's this guy, he's a piece of shit, and he's going to get knocked off by the succubus. Oh, here's this other guy, he's a piece of shit, going to get knocked off by the succubus. And then when Joel comes into town, you get an actual good versus evil narrative instead of anything quite as complicated as having some douchebag cheating on his wife or whatever. You could still make the argument that it's a little mean-spirited towards more promiscuous women, but I think that's a bit more of a stretch. It's nice to have something that isn't, and I hate to use this word, but problematic. It definitely skirts the line, but luckily you don't have to worry about that. You can show it to anybody, and they, in general, will like it if they like, blood and fucking. It was also one of the first successful movies shot with a primarily black cast in the horror genre in this time period. I think after this, it would be 95 that we'd get an actual black-led horror film, in the case of Tales from the Hood. And then I think also Vampire from Brooklyn came out that year. This one, coming out in 1990, really was paving the way for films like that. And I think really masters the combination of horror and comedy that you wanted from both of those movies. It's definitely more on the horror side of things. Technically, it's a horror comedy. Death by Temptation has a lot of little problems throughout. There's pacing issues, writing issues. There's certain storylines that aren't developed as much as they should be. But what it really gets right, what's almost like a masterstroke, whether it be James Bond III or somebody else in production, is that it really rides the line between horror and comedy really masterfully. And what I mean is that with this sort of setup, comedy can really take the reins and completely screw up any horror elements, and that's just not the case. It actually is kind of creepy at times. There are moments that are bonkers, balls to the wall madness. There's moments that are just pure atmosphere, and then there are those bits that are just kind of funny.
That's some freaky shit. We ain't gotta do all of that, man. Do we have to do all that?
Side note, don't expect a lot of Samuel L. Jackson in this. I think he has maybe, we'll be generous and say 3 scenes. He's good in those 3 scenes, but he's not really in it that much. Mind you, this is before he really made it big as an actor. So this is a minor part. Presumably, I guess he probably met James Bond III when they were filming School Days? Samuel L. Jackson in School Days?
College don't mean shit!
Acting-wise, everything's pretty solid, at least until James Bond III shows up. I hate to say it, but he's not bad. It's just he's not really a leading man type. He's actually, I don't know, he feels like a supporting character who was put in the leading man role, and it's unfortunate because he obviously has talent. He was a child actor before this, and I don't want to dog on the guy. He's perfectly fine. I just am not terribly interested in his story in this film.
There wasn't milk in the glass, but there wasn't alcohol in the glass either, okay?
Luckily, that's helped a lot by Kareem Hardison and Cynthia Bond, who are both pretty good. Hardison falls apart a little bit in his scenes with Bond, with James Bond III, rather, not Cynthia Bond, two unrelated people. But overall, they do tend to carry the show a bit. Bill Nunn is also pretty good here. You probably know him from a bunch of different projects, mostly often with Spike Lee. He was most notably in Do the Right Thing, where he is fucking great. And yeah, he's fine. I think he could have used better direction. He seems to fall off a little bit here and there. But his role as a bar patron who harbors a kind of undercooked secret is more or less pretty fun. The real standout is Cynthia Bond, who would go on to be a best-selling novelist with her 2014 book Ruby, which was selected as part of Oprah's book club. That's completely neither here nor there, but hey, fun fact. She brings a lot of sensuality to the film, which is, certainly bolstered by the musical score and the cinematography, but her just charisma in these scenes as the evil succubus brings the film up quite a few notches. Speaking of cinematography, it's mostly very crisp with reds and blues popping beautifully. You can tell that the lighting department isn't exactly working with millions of dollars here, but there's something about the 80s era film stock, grungy atmosphere, and vibrant skin tones that play together just right. There's also a nice mix of really creative and professional compositions that help Death by Temptation stand out amongst Vinegar Syndrome releases. Come to think of it, it seems like the best thing about this film, the real saving grace, is the cinematography. Say, who shot this anyway? Dickerson. Yep, Ernest K. Dickerson, DP behind Do the Right Thing and the director of Demon Knight, the greatest horror film of the 90s, was behind the visuals of Death by Temptation, and boy howdy, it sure does show. And look, while I'm sure Bond had plenty to say behind the scenes as the director, just look at this thing. It has Dickerson's sheen all over it. It is slathered in Dickerson. Speaking of old Ernie, we have a great interview with him from the old Troma release it's ported over. The interview is conducted by Lloyd Kaufman, and it is very, very, very informative. Probably the best special feature on this disc. We'll get into that in a second. It's 20 minutes long, and small side note, it's not technically a particularly well shot interview, but the way that Uncle Lloyd puts it together in this very, I don't know, it's handheld, I don't know what to call it. It's so charming. It's a very charming interview. We also get a very scant 2-minute interview with Fangoria's Michael Gingold. Gingold is always great, but this is about as informative as a 2-minute interview can be, which is fine. So, who is James Bond III? Well, good news and bad news, folks. You do get to learn a lot about James Bond III in this Blu-ray, specifically in the audio interview that is conducted by Joe Rubin, Vinegar Syndrome's own Joe Rubin. So that's the good news. It is a 91-ish minute interview that is presented basically as a commentary. It's you turn it on and it takes place over the course of the film. And, well, okay, it is very informative, especially the back half. You get to learn a lot about the production of Death by Temptation, but it is conducted via cell phone. And, well, take a listen to this.
I remember the day I realized I thought that I could write. Well, okay, when I had an experience once in school.
Yeah, it's rough. It's not a fun thing to listen to. It's kind of tough to listen to, honestly. I think I missed a lot of facts just because of how garbled some of the audio really is. I'm not going to try to paint this as a big negative against Vinegar Syndrome. I'm sure that they did not have any other option. Most likely, they reached out to James Bond III, and he was like, yeah, I could do it over the phone. And then they just winged it and did what they could. And considering that, it's a good interview. I would prefer to have like a transcription of it, but it's a good interview. As far as other editions go, we don't really have any other solid transfers of this movie. This is going to be the best transfer you're going to get, and it is a great transfer. As far as other editions, there's a DVD that Troma put out that is technically cheaper and does have both interviews from this disc on there, both video interviews. The only new special features that we get in this Blu-ray are the audio interview with James Bond III and an article gallery that is basically a 1-minute clip show. But when you're buying this, you're not really buying it for the special features. You're buying it because it is an amazing transfer of a beautiful film. There's really no serious issues here. There's every so often you get like a little speckle or something in the frame, a little bit of dirt or what have you, a little damage, but nothing aggressive. The grain structure is really beautiful. Like it's a very subtle might be a strong word, but it is a very natural grain structure. All the colors are just saturated enough. Everything looks to be just about on point and probably the best it's ever looked. So if you have enjoyed this movie in the past, or if you just really enjoy black cinema or the New York indie scene or just horror in general, this one is definitely a solid pickup. Death by Temptation is not like an all-out horror classic. It is flawed, it has pacing issues, some interesting writing choices, and of course the lead hero is a bit of a zero. But it is a beautiful film to look at. This 2K restoration is gorgeous, and honestly is, as far as I'm concerned, the ultimate edition of the film. I can't imagine a better release. I guess you could probably get like some solid documentary style interviews from cast and crew. That would be pretty cool, but that's about it. I don't think there's likely to be a whole lot of behind the scenes material available, and if you're able to get your hands on this slipcover edition, it's awesome. I wouldn't shell out like a ton of money for it, but if you get a chance, certainly grab it. Either which way, I plan on giving this film a few more spins in the old Blu-ray player. Highly recommended. All right, and that's it. Thank you so much for watching this video. We're going to be talking about a lot more Vinegar Syndrome releases as the month goes by. We have an unboxing from April, since that's just going to be arriving the day this video goes up. I don't know. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment below with your thoughts on Death by Temptation. What'd you think? Did you have a different opinion? Did you think it was a perfect movie? Did you hate it? I'm curious to know. And of course, don't forget to like my page on Facebook, follow me on Twitter, and if you really feel like just giving me the old reach around, then go over to Patreon and you know give me a few of your doll hairs. Take some of those doll hairs and send them over to me, okay? Okay? Send me some doll hairs. So until next time, go watch a movie.